thank you, Brother Richard, for sitting down once again for Behind the Final Call cover story. It has been a little while since we've been on air.
It's been a couple weeks.
A lot has been going on, of course, with the celebration of our Independence Day, our travels to Detroit. Because we haven't been seen don't mean that we haven't been working. But we are back here once again with Behind the Final Call cover story. This is volume number 38, number 41. The date on the paper is July 16th. Title on the paper is Lawsuit Charges Toxic Black Snow Endangers Poor Black People. Once again, the question I always ask, why this is the cover story?
Well, walaikum salam. Thank you for having me. And well, this is a story out of Florida, specifically in the area around Belle Glade, Florida, which is a rather poor area, predominantly black area. In that area, they have sugarcane. As part of the pre-harvesting of the sugarcane, they engage in a practice of burning. So basically it burns away all the vegetation, essentially leaving the sugarcane in the stalks, which makes the sugarcane easier to harvest. But the problem is, according to this lawsuit, according to residents, according to a lawsuit that's been filed by the Berman Group, as well as residents and environmental activists, there's a black ash that comes, of course, from the burning. It floats everywhere, which is why they call it black snow. This ash and the residue from this burning causes respiratory problems. One community leader believes that it may be related to increased cancer problems within the community. So we think it's a pretty important story to tell. We know that generally blacks have higher levels of asthma and these types of diseases. So if you're in a situation where there are other things happening that increase respiratory distress, that absolutely is not a problem. But the sugarcane industry burns about 400,000 acres each year. This is as they harvest their product. And according to Earth Justice, that burning puts out 2,800 tons of hazardous pollutants every year. So that's a tremendous amount of stuff going into the atmosphere. The sugarcane industry, of course, says, everything is okay, we're following good practices. But there's some real concerns here. So we hope people will check it out. Written by one of our up-and-coming writers, J.S. Adams, young sister. So go to finalcall.com and check it out.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And of course, there's a nice amount of articles that are in here that are very interesting. And of course, as we always tell you, we're not going to give it all to you. We need individuals to help to support. Of course, you can go to finalcall.com, but you can also get a digital subscription. And when you see the brothers in the community, make sure that you get a paper and support. You're not just supporting the paper, but you're supporting the movement. So make sure you do that. But I'm gonna jump to page 4. Article: Black Judge Targeted. Supporters say pending jail sentence aims to punish, silence black official.
Well, this is a piece out of Cincinnati. It's kind of interesting in a way, and it's kind of convoluted, right? You have a juvenile court judge, Tracy Hunter, who has kind of been in a battle with the white Republican power structure. At one point, she was on the court, or she was in the court system dealing with juvenile justice. Her supporters say that in this predominantly Republican area, they didn't like having a black woman that demanded that young people be treated a certain way, that would not allow the media to show their faces because they were minors, and other things. So there have been some battles, including even her election as a judge was challenged, and there was a fight over a couple years. during this time, she was eventually charged with engaging in something that helped her brother in terms of a job, getting him some information that he shouldn't have had or whatever. She denies that. She is actually will be going to. She was eventually sentenced to 6 months in jail, and now she's actually looking. If nothing changes soon, she's actually going to be going to jail. So she has strong support from black activists and the communities and groups like the Nation of Islam and others in Cincinnati. So I'm trying to see when she would be going to jail. But if nothing happens, then in a few weeks, they're going to lock her up. So again, that's Judge Tracie Hunter, Tracie. And you can read about this case in the final call. Having been this story, we were in Cincinnati at the Black Newspaper Publishers Convention.
Which was that the last issue or the issue before that was covered?
Last issue, I think.
Okay.
And one of the things that happened, of course, was the final call won 2 major awards. One for Best News Story, first place, and I think we won a second place for overall excellence, meaning that they looked at different additions to the final call over a period of time, and they found that our presentation was pretty good. But so during that conference, Judge Hunter and her supporters came, shared her story. I mean, it's a really interesting thing. A lot of strong black folks in Cincinnati. So keep your eye on Cincinnati, keep your eye on this case. But I mean, it was really kind of just, and when you read it, you'll see just kind of convoluted what this sister has gone through in terms of fighting to actually keep a seat that she won.
Right.
And then dealing with lawsuits and charges and counter charges. This actually has been going on for several years. But check it out for yourself. Let us know what you think.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you. Well, just want to jump, and of course there are some articles that are closer to the front that we'll get to, but I want to end on a very positive note, so I'm going to go through some other ones. That this is not that it's negative, but the Ethiopian Jews protest police violence. And of course we've heard about the treatment in which the final call has covered in the past, about how those Ethiopian Jews have been treated. And of course this is just another incident with how police have handled our people and how we responded. Can you give us a little bit more about that?
This again shows the disparity and the racism in the state of Israel. Ethiopian Jews who have been in Israel for some time, they still suffer from discrimination. They still suffer from what they say is police brutality and targeting. This story is dealing with rallies after a young man was shot and killed by an off-duty police officer. So the off-duty officer, who was white and Jewish, said that he was at a playground and apparently something happened, and he became, the officer felt threatened by these teenagers on a playground. And he opened fire. He claims he opened fire toward the ground, and the bullet ricocheted and killed an 18-year-old young Ethiopian Jewish man.
Wow.
So this is really a horrible thing. And this idea of whites being threatened and resorting to violence immediately is really something.
And it's interesting. I don't know if you heard this story, but I heard it earlier today. A brother was shot by a white man because he was playing rap music.
Yeah.
And instead of, he said his argument was that he was being proactive instead of reactive.
Yeah.
So he saw a young black brother listening to rap music and felt that was threatening to him.
Well, that's Elijah Alamein out of Phoenix.
Yes, sir.
And actually, this guy stabbed him.
All right.
In the back.
Yeah, right.
And then slit his throat and killed Elijah. This young man was 17 years old. So we plan on working on a story about that as well for this week. But again, interesting fact that we see these parallels between the black experience in Israel, black experience in America, black young males being seen as a threat, being seen as an enemy, being seen as someone who needs to be targeted. In one case by the police, now in this case by someone who's a civilian. So again, this is why we say that we need to pay attention to the struggle of black folks all over the planet, because our struggle is one.
And just
after this, with this call for justice, there were protests, and there was, of course, clashes between the Ethiopian Jews and police officers. So we should continue to monitor this situation as well.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I'm going to jump to the editorial, red, right, and racially skewed. Just dealing with it, and of course we can see it doesn't matter where we go, not even in America, but no matter where we go as black people, we're suffering from oppression, we're suffering from attacks. If you're not white, you got to look out.
Well, that's essentially what this editorial is about. We basically, America recently celebrated her anniversary again on July 4th. But despite that celebration, and despite people talking about how far we've come in the country being the greatest in America, we know that there's still a disparity, there's still a lack of respect for black life. There's still a gap between how black folk live and how white folk live, and opportunity and health and justice and education, and on and on and on and on, right? So we just wanted to, we looked at a couple of studies by the Pew Center. Now this is an interesting one that came out July 2nd. It involved Hispanics. And the Hispanics, the darker they were, the more likely they were to report discrimination. The more likely they were to report being insulted. The more likely they were to report being denied opportunity, right? Because the Hispanics can be classified ethnically as either black or white, right? So you can have everything from a dark-skinned Dominican to a light-skinned Cuban, but they're both considered Hispanic, but they can be classified as either black or white. That I found interesting. We also referred back to a Pew Center study a little earlier this year that found about 7 in 10 black Americans, right, say that race relations are bad, and few people black folks see them improving. Some 56% of the people, according to this survey, feel that the president has made things worse, and a good proportion of black people doubt that we will ever be able to get justice in this country.
Wow.
So again, we see these things. We just want to note and point out realities so that we can understand what we're looking at a time of great change. And as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad talks about and warns us, and the Minister Farrakhan reminds us that we will never be able to live with these people in peace. So more and more and more we see it being borne out in violence, we see it borne out in politics, and we see it borne out in studies. So again, something to consider.
Okay. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And of course, not a new issue as it relates to Facebook punishing and the response and the attacks that we've had to deal with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan being banned from Facebook. And of course, this article doesn't talk about it, but it sounds like Twitter is the attacks from Twitter coming up and attempting to get rid of him on Twitter is coming up as well. But can you give us a little bit from Brother Dimitric's article, Facebook Punishes Minister Farrakhan.
Well, you know, Brother Dimitri Muhammad, the student minister out of Memphis, also a member of the NOI research team, who's been writing regular columns for the Final Call. He looked at a book, The American Slave Codes, and he compared what was in that book in terms of what black folks were allowed to do, what black folks were prohibited from doing. And the jobs that black folks were allowed to do were all degrading and demeaning jobs. The jobs that would have been more uplifting, more morally upright, more constructive, blacks were denied. So Brother Dimitri walked through these slave codes and this tradition trying to deprive black people of the right to be productive, the right to be upstanding, the right to be creative. And this constant attempt to keep us limited in a small space, in a small box. And so Brother Dimitri lays that out and overlays on that these attacks on Minister Farrakhan and how you had slave codes enacted in a certain way yesterday, but that same mindset, that same mentality operates today. So the tools are different, but the control of black people, or the effort to control black people, the effort to keep us limited and narrow remains, and that's part of the main reason for the targeting of Minister Farrakhan on Facebook. So it's a pretty fascinating piece.
Yes, sir. So honestly, I'm going to jump back towards the front. And of course, we know, and you should know, that Student Minister Ava Muhammad has been on a tour, the Separation Tour, and her last stop was in Philadelphia. And, you know, it's really important that we're making sure that we follow this. And as this discussion has been up as it relates to reparation, Dr. Wesley presented a beautiful argument and discussion on just how we can see in the past when the discussions of civil rights and integration were up, and the Nation of Islam even at that time was pushing separation, is that it's interesting that if they knew that these were two discussions that were going on in the black community, they didn't like either or, but they would push civil rights and they would push integration so that it would attempt to lessen our appeal. And now we have that same thing. It's interesting, and not by coincidence, as the argument and position of separation is once again being heard louder and louder in the population of this tour, that we come up with reparations. And that those who have not cared about us will be willing to give us some money before they let us go.
Well, I mean, it's a very fascinating situation. One, I think you have to consider, we just talked about this Pew Center study, where a significant amount of black folks doubt, they don't believe we will ever get justice in this country. Right. Never. Well, that means that brings you to a point of decision. If you're never going to get justice somewhere, what are your options? The other thing that when it comes to separation that I think we need to be clear on is something that I heard the minister say years ago that just made absolute sense. And he said, we're already separated.
That's right.
But he said, we're actually not separated, we're actually segregated. Segregation is when somebody keeps you in an inferior position and an inferior environment based on race. And you suffer because you're not able to access the benefits, the social capital, the economic capital, and the opportunity that exists in a larger society. So you're what they call a second-class citizen, right? So separation, we say, is two equals that have decided to be apart. Like America decided to separate from Britain. You have different separatist movements all over the world now, even including Catalan in Spain, basically a section of the country that wants to be separate. They want to be their own territory. And you see it other places. So this thing of self-determination coming from people who have suffered. I think we have to look at why the need for separation. Of course, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said it was the best and only solution. But why did he say the best and the only? Well, as Minister Farrakhan said, we've had over 400 years experience dealing with these people. We're not better off. You talked about a young black male had his throat cut. Why? Because a white man allegedly felt threatened and killed him. The boy was 17 years old, minding his own business, hardworking, upstanding, listening to music on his earphones. But he was perceived to be a threat, and this white man killed him. You had the case of Jordan Davis, listening to music in a vehicle. Not the white man's vehicle, another vehicle. But the white man is in a different vehicle, decides he doesn't like the music, he demands that they turn it down, and then eventually fires into the vehicle, killing Jordan Davis. You know? So this becomes key to us, right? It becomes key. We cannot get along with these people in peace. Whether you're talking about education, we're separate, housing, we're separate, we're even separate in terms of the TV shows that we're more bound to like. We're separate from them largely in our politics. So the question becomes, under what conditions are we going to live? So these town hall meetings are an opportunity for our people to learn and to hear about realities and how those realities need to be approached.
Praise you to Allah. I want to move on that same line and that same spirit is that as we're holding and making the critiques of this world and society is that we're not ignoring the responsibility that we have to take in our own communities. And can you go into that next article, Movement Towards Peace in Newark Streets? Our young student minister, Brother Abdul Haq Muhammad, is working, and the believers there are working. Can you give us a little bit more about what's going on?
This was a meeting that was held in Newark to help eliminate some of the violence in the streets of Newark. So they had a summit. Brother My Song, the general, who's a hip hop artist, helped to facilitate this. Brother Hawk helped to facilitate this. Some brothers and sisters in Newark working diligently to stop this violence, help to come together, and the goal was to carve out some agreements to begin to limit spaces where violence is going to take place, right? So that becomes the beginning for a broader peace. If we can sit down at a table and begin to carve out zones where we're not going to harm each other, well, that lays the basis for us to say we're not going to harm each other, period. Right. So, of course, this is a long process. This is a difficult process. I mean, this is not easy, hocus pocus, wave a magic wand and everything is going to be okay. You got serious social issues and economic issues and political issues that are at the root of what our people face that drives the quote-unquote violence. And you have what young people have suffered and how they have inflicted pain and even death on one another. So this is a very serious work. We're happy to highlight it in the final call. We hope that Allah will bless all of those involved in this work. Our brothers and sisters in Newark, the activists, Brother Mansal, and others. We hope that they will continue. Brother Mayor Ras Baraka participated in this. And this is a different take. As opposed to saying we need more police, we need more high-powered weapons, we need more enforcement, that this is a different way now in terms of trying to bring us together to increase peace and lessen tension and keep expanding this movement for urban peace. Great story, and again, you can read about it in the final call.
Yes, sir. I want to jump to, and I've been telling people about the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's words in Detroit at the mosque. And so it's beautiful. I hadn't had a chance to read it, but I heard it. And it was very impactful, and I think it connects with these past two stories. But can you give us a little bit more about the minister's speech and the words shared at the dedication of Muhammad Mosque #1 in Detroit in this house?
Well, this was a couple weeks ago. It was a rather impromptu dedication. We know that Muhammad Mosque #1 is our first mosque in the movement of the Nation of Islam. Well, they moved into a new home, a former synagogue, and they're refurnishing it, renovating it. Brother Anthony Muhammad, a businessman, entrepreneur, actually gave $300,000 that helped the purchase of the mosque. Brother Student Minister Troy was able to appeal to the community for help, and he said he was able to raise another about $120,000 to help get the house in physical shape for a great spiritual teaching and a redemptive work. So the minister came and he was just going to stop by, but the spirit was so thick, the crowd was standing room only. The mosque was very beautiful, even though it's still under renovation. So the minister was inspired to speak. And very beautiful message about what this house, meaning the Mosque of Muhammad, are made for. The importance of Jesus and Muhammad. The importance of us coming out of this world and being made new. So there's an incredible message here. So we hope you will take time to read it and go to store.finalcall.com and get the full message. This is kind of an excerpt. So read this online and then get the full message, but very beautiful, very inspiring. He talked about women, this house being a place where women would be uplifted and taught and respected. He talked about children being safe from pedophiles and child molesters in this space. He talked about us being grown into the men that we want to be, and ultimately all of us being grown into God.
That's right.
Through the work in this house. So you got to check it out for yourself.
And I think that that's a beautiful connection with those 3 articles. We see that what we have the ability to do in our community, what that separate place would be like and what that would look like, is that which he talks about in this house is that house of separation, that house where we no longer have those other elements and forces that exist around us.
And of course, the brothers and sisters at the mosque plan on extending what is in the house outside the house.
That's right.
So they plan on working in the community. There's a senior citizens home right across the street. They plan on helping to serve them, make them safe. So there's a lot. I mean, it's a beautiful facility. Has a professional kitchen. There's going to be a school. It has a facility where you can actually have performances in addition to the main sanctuary. So a lot of potential, not only for a house of worship, but for a center and a launching pad for the work of rebuilding our community and the work of redemption for people that have been destroyed, which is what this house is for and what it's all about.
And so we were blessed that weekend to hit Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan on at least 3 occasions where he spoke on Friday, Saturday, and then closed that visit on Sunday. But I got to give those who don't already know that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan will be speaking on the 21st, not this Sunday coming up, but the following Sunday, live and in person, right here at Mosque Mariam, 7351 South Stony Island. For those who are unable to come to Chicago, we would encourage you to make sure that you check it out on NOI.org. And of course, since we are right here live at the foodie spot 7350 South Stony Island, when you come to Chicago, after you come to Chicago, you want to come right over to the street, and you can see Sister Carmela walking right past us right now, but you can go grab a meal after that meet.
That's right.
I know I left out a whole lot. You need to check it out, but is there anything else you want to touch on before we close out?
Again, there's a piece we have about policing in Baltimore and a huge scandal. You want to check that out. We've got got a story about immigrants and migrants in detention. So we need to just check out the Final Call. Let us know what you think, and stay tuned. We try to get a little better every single week.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And I want to send a special shout out and thank you to the man behind the camera today, our brother Quinn, who's working it out, doing a little switching and making sure the camera and all of that stuff and the sound. So if it don't sound right, if it don't look right, we're gonna blame it all.
See, now you wrong.
But this definitely appreciate the help, and he has actually helped with some other editing that we've been doing for other projects. So we definitely appreciate that. But if you don't have nothing else, until next time.
7350 South Stony Island Avenue, the foodie spot, which is where we are. Come on by, spend some money, help build black economy, but better yet, support a business that is supporting your community. You know they feed the homeless from this house,
yes,
the
sir.
foodie spot, you know, out of their own pocket. And not only that, but now they've coupled and done some work with the University of Chicago, where when they go out and feed people for free on the street, the medical people come and do different screenings. That's coming out of here.
Yes,
so
sir.
that shows a commitment to the community, and so where you put your money matters. 7350 South Stony Island Avenue, the foodie spot. Come on down, get great food, support a great cause, because the food is excellent.
Maybe your sister Carmela to pop over here and tell people if they do come to Chicago on the 21st, what they can expect. So she can't move. She been
I don't
working
know
hard
why
today.
you keep doing that. Every
But
time
it's all
she
good.
says
Next time. Okay. She said she's not a camera person, but she is a cooking person.
That's right.
So, Brother Michael, you got anything to tell people who will be here on the 21st? The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is speaking right across the street. What should they do after they hear the minister?
After you hear from the voice of God through the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan,
Now she want to come over.
you need to come on.
Mike speak. Go ahead.
You need to come on over across the street.
Yes, sir.
Right directly across
Yes,
the street.
sir.
7350 South Stony Island
sir.
Avenue to the foodie spot.
Oh yeah.
You can get you some pineapple jerk chicken.
Yes, sir.
You can get you some lemon pepper dill salmon.
Yes, sir.
You can get you some broccoli croquettes. Some Cajun red snapper.
Yes, sir.
Some black beans and rice.
Yes, sir.
Some mac and cheese.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, don't get me excited.
Come on
Some
now.
vegetable medley. Some cabbage medley. Hey, listen. Hey.
And bean pie.
And bean pie.
Oh man, don't forget about
All
the
kinds of
bean
bean pie.
pie. All kinds of bean
Man.
pies.
What do you mean all
Caramel
kinds of bean pie?
cheese bean pies, apple caramel cheese bean pies, strawberry cream bean pies. You got some blueberry cream bean pies. Man, what you want?
Hold up. How about the pound cake?
Hey, don't forget about Big Mom pound cakes.
That's right.
Hey, come on through. Hey.
So until next time, behind the final call cover story, we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you.